are very plot-driven, but also very much about hardware, not quite so much about emotion. And coming to my stories from my very early books in romance, where it was all about relationship, and the fact, I guess, that I'm a highly emotional person myself, that I imbue my characters with a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings. There's a lot of intensity to my stories.
And I would definitely agree with that. It's interesting. When I was speaking with a fellow reader earlier today before we went on the air, she was asking me who would I compare your style to. And, you know, even though there's really no comparisons for a style, who I thought about when it comes to your transition from romance to what you're writing now, I couldn't help but think about Lisa Jackson. We had her on our broadcast a couple of years ago, and she talked with us about her transition from romance to doing more suspense and also being character-driven. What is it do you think, Erica, I mentioned about your ability to be so diverse and to have such a wide fan base, because that's one thing about your books I've noticed is that you've gotten compliments from all across the board. Do you think it's your commitment to the characters that's able to make that crossover possible?
You know, I think that really good fiction and fiction that captures readers' hearts and minds is really character-driven, because the characters stick with you and you love them and you relate to them, or you hate them and want to see justice done. So I would think, yes. And also, I think that my stories, how do I put this? I don't know. I try to come up with kind of unique stories every time, and they're not too soft and they're not too gritty. You know what I mean? So that they're not so gritty that they turn off, you know, a reader that doesn't really have a stomach for lots of gore, lots of violence in the book. Even though I have a lot of violence, it's a little more off-scene. But by the same token, I think my stories do have a lot of grit and a lot of intensity. So for readers who prefer not a really soft read, like let's say a Mary Higgins Clark, they're still getting, you know, a little bit of that thrill then with my work.
Erica Spindler is definitely an author that if you have not read, you need to pick it up. You can find out more information about Erica Spindler by going to www.ericaspindler.com. Now, that really doesn't end it here. For those of you who might not have even gotten to the point of writing your book, what do you do? What advice do you have? One of the most interesting stories, in fact fascinating ones that I've had this year, have been with author and publisher Stacey Kannenberg. Now, she is someone that actually got her inspiration by doing what you're doing right now, watching television. It was watching a series of shows on Oprah that gave her the inspiration she needed to start her own business. Now that her books have been published, and now that she is the publisher, she's going to share with you exactly what those episodes of Oprah did for her. Take a listen. Your story is so amazing, and I want to talk about your series of books and how you're helping parents and other guardians to be able to work with children, because I think that's so important. But before we get into that, Stacey, I want to talk about you. How would you describe who Stacey Kannenberg is, and where did this commitment to literacy come from?
Well, you know what? Stacey Kannenberg loves to read. I discovered the love of reading when I was in 7th grade. I was kind of a late bloomer for reading, and it was through a really good friend when we were in 7th grade who was a diehard reader. And one day she came into the library dressed in her little cheerleading outfit and said, she was telling the librarian, I know I've read this book 3 times and I know I have to turn it in today, and I know that, this book, somebody needs to save the book. And I happened to walk into the library doors at that exact moment, and she turned around and saw me and said, Stacey, save this book. And I remember all of a sudden everything got really quiet in the library and everybody was looking at me. And so I was forced with this decision. What do I say? I'm not really a big reader. Oh, sure, I'll take this book. And so I grabbed it from her, and I remember the librarian looking at me. And so I took the book home. I signed it out that day, and I took the book home. And Mary is a cheerleader, and there was a big football game going on that